So the E-Levy is finally gone, but we must ask a fundamental question. Is it a fiscal misstep? That is what we're analyzing tonight. There is one major expectation, if there was any expectation that exceeded all of it, was the promise by the NDC when they were in opposition that they will repeal the E-Levy. It was part of a bouquet of tax handles that they had promised that they were going to scrap. Today, they make good on that promise. The E-Levy, obviously, is the one that affected most people. Every single Ghanaian had a family member or somebody who was affected by this. And it was the most controversial tax handle introduced possibly in the last 2 decades, right? And it generated a huge controversy. We were told that the E-Levy was going to be the key savior of this economy at the time when we were in dire economic straits. Did it actually happen? This is a story tonight. It is no more. E-Levy is gone. If you're now getting home and wondering what happened today, this is the big story. It has gone now. Yes, it has been approved by Parliament. The parliamentarians have voted unanimously. MPs on both sides of the aisle voted to scrap it. It is now left with the president to put his signature to that piece of document for it to become law, for it to now take effect, for the GRA to implement it. We understand that the president should have the piece of document before him tomorrow. So by close of day tomorrow, he would have appended his signature. And then the GRA will go into execution, working with some of the industry players, particularly those in the sector where the platforms that they had used to implement the E-Levy will have to recalibrate and scrap it and take it off. So you, when you send your next memo, will not be charged. But the E-Levy has traveled a long way. It has been 2 years, 10 months, and 25 days since it was implemented. It has been a long time indeed. And now, tonight, finally, after all these years, 2 years, 10 months, 25 days, it is now gone. But it leaves in its wake a few questions. One of them was posed by the man himself, the man who introduced it. He told us at the time that E-Levy will prevent the government from seeking support from the IMF. What happened? In spite of the imposition of the E-Levy, in spite of the pain it inflicted on people, in spite of the resistance across the country, they still imposed it with expectation that to keep us from going to the IMF, and we still ended up at the IMF anyway. He was determined to do anything to avoid the IMF route, anything, including putting his own reputation, the government reputation on the line, saying, mark this, we will not go to the IMF. And so they thought that the IMF would save them, because if he introduced the E-Levy will save them, because if we introduce the E-Levy, you rake in enough revenue, shows up your revenue challenges, and then the economy will possibly recover somehow. It did not pan out like that. And really this captures why this E-Levy had gone full circle and has come back. Now, even the NPP in opposition, just before the elections, told us in their manifesto that he wanted it gone. Today, the MPs on the side of the minority, the MPP side, they did not stand in the way of government. They joined their NDC colleagues in scrapping it. So this expectation, we all know was made in 2022, did not happen. We're still under the IMF. The E-Levy was until tonight, maybe tomorrow, still on our books. It's gone now. And there is a long way yet. And let's go down memory lane a bit, because this has been a very controversial subject for a long time. 2021 was the first time we heard about this. The former finance minister proposes the E-Levy at the time. It was then proposed to and pegged at 1.75%, subsequently reduced to 1.5%. And this followed a fair bit of fight in Parliament, controversy, jostling, protests across the country, by the way. Then E-Levy became a big deal to the point where the former majority leader, Secretary Minister Bongsu's birthday, became a scene for a lot of sensational coverage when he sensationally received a gift of a cake carved in E-Levy. That became a big subject indeed at the time, if you remember. And then we know, February 2022, after the cake controversy, NDCU then hit the streets and they protested. So you begin to understand how far we've traveled. March 29, 2022, the E-Levy is finally passed after the huge fight on the floor of Parliament. It was one of the controversial moments for Parliament itself. And then they began to implement it in 2022 in May, hurriedly done. The government needed it. It was the lifeblood of the economy, we were told. It didn't pan out like that at all. July 2022, government then, in spite of the expectation that the E-Levy would save us from the IMF, and it's not like the IMF, going to the IMF is a crime, but the government then thought going to the IMF will be the final nail in their coffin in terms of the management of the economy and the accession, really, what it presented, what it signaled, that you failed, and so you are now handing your economy back to the hands of a foreign entity at a time when the government was running on the back of a promise, which was couched in a slogan, Ghana beyond aid, in essence doing the opposite if you go. So you saw why they didn't want to go. In spite of that, they still went in July 2022, having implemented the E-Levy and began to see that the E-Levy was not the panacea, was not the solution, was not a silver bullet they thought it would be. They went to the IMF. And then, a year down the line, they promised the IMF that they're going to review it. They did so. They reviewed it down to 1%, but they kept it in the books yet because we're still making some money. Now, this is the IMF problem in a snapshot. The projection, and I'm just reading the IMF program document. The IMF itself described the E-Levy projections as overly optimistic. They had, in the initial years, when they began in 2022, projected that they were going to get 6.9 billion cedis from the E-Levy alone. They ended up that year with 592 million. You see the gap there? This is huge. The gap between 6.9 billion and 592 million is huge. And that's the time that they began implementing it. The signal was very clear that it was not going to be the silver bullet. And it proved so. The line just dropped dramatically over time. The reality began to sink in. The next time they checked again in 2023, projection again, in spite of this, they sort of learned the lesson there and brought the projection down to 2.2 billion. Even that, from 6.9 billion to 2.2 billion, even that, they still failed to meet that target, that expectation. They only brought in 1.1 billion at the time in 2023. And then we've seen the subsequent years, projections of 2.1, 2.4, they still haven't met any of those targets. We're still waiting for the final numbers as far as the 2024, 2025 is concerned. So you begin to see very instantaneously with the snapshot that the E-Levy has failed to deliver on its own objectives, the reasons why it was brought into being. And so what do you do with it was a question. The previous government, they themselves realized at some point, at least their flag bearer realized that we need to scrap it. It became a nuisance tax because it was putting a lot of pain but not bringing in much. And if you look at the bigger picture, 2025, because once you take the E-Levy out, you will leave a gap. Because you look at the revenue there, there's a deficit there, and that's what I'm pointing at here. The revenue is 224 billion. You're talking about expenditure of 281 billion. So there's a gap there of a deficit of 59 billion that you need to bridge. You're taking, regardless of how underperforming the E-Levy had been, it's still some money for you, right? And then you look at the 674 million transactions per year that we're seeing as far as the average money transactions were concerned. So this was good, right? So there's some money still to be made from E-Levy because all this 250 billion value there, the E-Levy will take some of that into the coffers of the state for developmental purposes, we're told, right? So this was great. But there's something else very fascinating about the E-Levy. Now that we are beginning to unpack it and look back, that we need to explore. Many thought the E-Levy, once it was pass will have one effect, that the number of active mobile money agents will be impacted, because of course people will not be patronizing it anymore, will find other means of circumventing their service. But we saw that this line here shows us before and after. Before, we're talking about 450, right, thousand of them. After that, it still continued to climb. There was a slight dip shortly after the implementation, but it climbed and began to drop. We quite don't know why this drop has happened, because the E-Levy has been implemented over the period. But it climbed that. The mobile money agents climbed that, and share number across the country climbed. And then you look at the total number of mobile money transactions. Also, we thought, again, the E-Levy, once you implement it, people will dodge it, right? But again, we saw that still climbed in millions, right? So you have a 430 million before, after it climbed all the way to 745 million. Because really, just using my own example anecdotally, it is almost inevitable that you have to use Momo at some point, almost inevitable. And the banks made it easy for you to do so. Even if you didn't have a Momo number or a number registered on Momo, you were still transferring money from your bank account to a Momo number, right? And a mobile money number, and vice versa. So you were definitely going to use it. If you had a carpenter in your house and you're at work and he was working for you and he's finished work, you have to pay him somehow. So this became the preferred choice of money transfers locally. Even when I travel, I still make mobile transactions. So it became inevitable. So people were still using it, and yet government was not making as much as he had anticipated. Again, you look at the total value of Momo transactions, still climbed from 90 billion to 334 billion. And these are the numbers that convinced the previous government that they can make 6 billion. These are the numbers. They looked at these and said, look, this is climbing. We can make enough money there to stabilize the economy somehow. They were dead wrong, right? The evidence shows it. But it's not like they were not warned. They were warned that this will happen. They simply didn't listen. Today, humble pie was eating long before today, by the way, because it was in their manifesto that they're going to scrap it. The E-Levy is not the only tax gone today. The emissions tax and the betting tax, both are also gone today. Parliament unanimously voting to scrap both taxes as well. Again, the NDC taking the box there. The emissions tax was not implemented, but we know that the betting tax was implemented, and we have that confirmation on the show from the former finance minister. And so far, they had 199 million that had come in. So that will leave you a gap that they need to deal with, that betting tax that was implemented, right? And so you're looking at the breakdown of betting tax of 2023, they got 51 million. And then now we're talking about 147 million that had come in there. So you need to bridge the gap somehow. We've heard from the finance minister that already the three taxes combined, they're going to bridge the gap that has been left. They're going to bridge it with the monies that they're expecting from the tax refund account. Some 16 billion, the analysis have told them over time, was accumulated and wasn't used. They've gone to Parliament, and that law has been passed. They've reduced that threshold from 6% to 4%, and you're going to have 2% there that will come in now that they can use to bridge this gap, right? But the key question to ask tonight is it a fiscal misstep? And will the tax refund savings on the back of the revision of the percentage, the threshold, will that be sustainable over time to bridge this gap sustainably? It's a key question to ask, right? And my guest will join me to address that question for you here on PMX. So stay with me. Thank you for staying with us on PM Express, and it's always brought to you by Syntex Tanks. It is strong, it is tough. It's also brought to you by Academic Times and Pepsodent Cavity Fighter. And if you're looking for a water tank to store your water, you don't have to look any further. It is Syntex Tanks. It is simple. If your tank doesn't have the tortoise on it, then it is not correct tank. It's not the correct tank to use. It's right only if it has the tortoise on it, because it is strong, it is durable, and built to handle our Ghanaian weather. Call them across the country and get your tortoise tank right now. Call them on 0244 335 168, or look out for their agents across the country, 400 of them. Syntex tanks are strong and yet tough. The Academic Times newspaper is one I recommend to you. We'll be launching very soon with distinctive publication and journal to showcase and empower students across all educational levels when it launch. I will tell you about it so you can look for them also. And then tonight before you sleep, get a Pepsodent cavity fighter. Joining me right now for a conversation in the studio with me is a man who has been fighting for a long, long time since the E-Levy was passed. He is my guest in the studio. Charles is a Mobile Money Agents Association spokesperson, Charles Kwesi Addo. I'm grateful that you could join me.
Thank you.
Kenneth Shigbe is also joining me right now. He speaks for the collection of agents across the country who have been in the business of working on the transactions, and he's going to join me pretty shortly. Dr. Kenneth Shigbe will speak to us. And Dr. Stephen Amwa is a former finance minister. I understand today he was the one who seconded this. And after all, their manifesto also said they were going to scrap it. It has been scrapped. Professor Godfrey Bokwe is a man who told us tonight that he is waiting for the E-Levy to go so he can send a memo. And he's been protesting against it in the last 2 or so years. And he joins me now for a conversation. Prof, thank you very much. He's an economist and professor of finance. We're hoping that we're going to speak to the Deputy Finance Minister just to get an update tonight, whether the bill, after it was passed, has been sent to the president already, and is the president ascended to it. We understand it may be tomorrow, but you can never tell. This was very important to the government, and so now that it has been passed, I'm pretty sure the president doesn't want to waste time. Thomas Nyako-Ampem will join us, and then we can get him to clarify for us. But let me come to you, Kwesi, on this matter. You protested when it was first passed. You told the Ghanaian people that it will affect your work and impact Ghanaians in many ways. Well, give me a quick reaction to that. Stay with me. I understand that the minister is with us. Thomas Ampemnya, thank you very much for joining us.
Hello.
Great to have you.
Please, I'm stepping out of the chamber.
Okay.
Give me 1 second.
Okay, great. We'll get him because Parliament is still in session and there's a lot of work happening, so he'll join us pretty shortly. Give me a quick reaction to what has happened tonight.
Evans, thank you so much, and very good evening to your cherished viewers. I must say that the agent body is so happy, and the entire country. Interestingly, we are not just happy because we are agents, we also double our subscribers. And when it was announced today in Parliament, in fact, we were so much excited. But with that said, there's a lot that government also needs to do right after this seizure of the levy. If the president has sent to it as agent body, we know that we are also going to expand our portfolio in terms of volumes, in terms of opening out other outlets to augment the effort of the government. But there is another aspect that we are looking through government to also help us. You know, since February 2022, you could recall that the finance minister then told us that the E-Levy is coming to push one primary policy called the Youth Start. If you could recall, the Youth Start. Yeah. By then, we were scouting out for revenue to push the youth to be able to start up their own businesses. We were already start up. We were in business running. We don't have money to be able to augment our effort and meet the needs of our people. But it will interest you to know that most of the agents are on loans with huge interest rates. And therefore, we were shocked and amazed when we met the finance minister on the 10th of May, 2022 at the Jubilee House with the president. We stated emphatically that looking at the numbers and the data that is previewed to them, we are on the ground. The happenings are not the actuals, and therefore there's the need for us to judge. We were made to understand that this...
Because you didn't want the E-Levy.
We did not.
Because they were projecting 6.9 billion.
We told them it is not feasible.
Okay.
We told them. And even in 2023, you could realize that the 2.2, they were able to actualize only 50%, which was 1.1. We told them that when customers come to our end, we have direct interaction with them. And anything that you want to add up, they might say that it is the agent who want to take the money. Most of them, and one difficult aspect was the education on the E-Levy.
Stay with me. The minister is with me. I need to get some clarity on that, where we are tonight after the Parliament's decision to repeal that piece of legislation. Thomas Nyako-Ampem, thank you very much. I'm grateful that you could make time out of your busy schedule to talk to us tonight. So earlier in the day, this is around 3 p.m., it was confirmed that unanimously, both sides of the House have decided to repeal the E-Levy. Just curious whether you have managed to transmit it yet to the president.
Good evening. Good evening to all your listeners. In fact, Parliament is still in session. And so I doubt if the clerks have been able to transmit what we are doing to the president. There are a number of other bills that we are considering. And so I'm sure if they will be able to do that, it will have to be tomorrow or the day after. So I doubt that it has been transmitted to the president as we speak. But once Parliament has repealed it in due course, it will get to the president's desk.
I mean, so for those who tonight have listened to the news, very excited about this is not going to happen that quickly. I mean, it will take some time before they begin to feel the impact of what the decision will take in Parliament.
Well, what I suspect is that, in fact, I understand the president may be out of town tomorrow. And so all things being equal, latest by Wednesday, he will assent to the bill. And once he assents, the finance ministry will get the GRA to discontinue the collection of E-Levy.
And you say Wednesday because you have a long...
It is going to happen as soon as possible.
Okay, and I guess you're saying Wednesday because you have a long period of holidays in between.
Exactly.
The president going to be away too. Yeah. But also that allows you some time to work with the GRA and the other stakeholders to recalibrate systems ahead of next week.
Yes, and the GRA already is aware of this process, and so my discussions with the Commissioner General is that as soon as the president assents, they will take steps to comply.
Is it fair?
And so the good news to all Ghanaians is that the E-Levy that majority of Ghanaians vehemently opposed to is being repealed through to the words of President John Dramani Mahama.
Is it fair to say then that you're looking at the timelines, if the president assents it on Wednesday, you have some time to work with the GRA to make sure that the systems are in place to implement? Maybe by close of next week, Friday looks more likely for it to take effect, based on what you know?
I'm sure it will take effect before next week, Friday.
Next week, Friday.
Yeah.
The big question is whether this may be a fiscal misstep. We had in the budget, you told us that you're plugging this hole with the savings you're going to make from the tax refund account, including today. Another thing you've done today is to reduce the threshold from 6 to 4%, with what you're saving there, then going in to plug this hole. But is that sustainable over a period of time?
It is sustainable because we have analyzed the tax refund account for over the past 8 years, and we have realized that over the period, an average of 43% of the funds accrued into the account is what is used for tax refund purposes. The rest of it, in fact, 57% of it is misapplied. And so we have taken a firm decision that we will not allow that chunk of money to be misapplied, and so it will be raked back into the consolidated fund for us to appropriate for the many things that Ghanaians need. And that is huge amount, in excess of 3.8 billion cedis. And so that is what we are using. And in addition to that, we have extended the sunset clause for the Growth and Sustainability Act to 2028. And because the gold mining companies are making huge profits, we have increased the rate from 1% to 3%. So all these are going to give us additional revenue. And the argument we have made on this floor, I mean, if you listen to the former finance minister, he was questioning why we are taxing the sector that is giving us growth, that is the mining sector. Our response has been simple, that if we don't tax the sector that is making super profit, which other sector do you expect us to tax? Do you expect us to tax the cocoa sector that is making losses and put the incident on the poor cocoa farmer? Or certainly no. And so in good times where gold prices have increased to $3,000 per ounce, this is the time to rake in a little more from the gold mining companies because they are making a lot of profit. And so there are a lot of stopgap measures that we have put in place to bridge the gap, the revenue loss that we have made. It is not only E-Levy. We have repealed the betting tax. We have repealed the emissions levy. We have also removed the 1.5% withholding tax on small-scale mining companies. because we believe that with the introduction of the gold board, we have to give incentive for everybody to channel their gold through the small-scale mining sector, to channel their gold through the gold board, so that we can get the forex that we are targeting. If we continue to impose 1.5 withholding tax on them, chances are that some will smuggle out the gold that we have, and we won't get the benefit from it. So a lot of interventions, and we are minded that if we are imposing tax in this period of difficulty for Ghanaians, where a lot of Ghanaians have been pushed down the poverty line, we shouldn't tax the ordinary Ghanaians. Our interventions are carefully targeting so that the incidence of any intervention will not be on the poor Ghanaians. And so that is what we are doing, and we are still in Parliament with the rest of the processes.
Okay, thank you very much, Thomas Ampem-Nyako, the Deputy Finance Minister. I want to leave him to return to the Chamber of Parliament, where there's a lot of work happening. I want to bring in Ken Ashigbe. He is the CEO of the Ghana Chamber of Electronic Money, ECUS. And I also have with me Professor Godfrey Bokwing. I want to quickly go to Ken Ashigbe, Dr. Ken Ashigbe, because they are key stakeholders in this. And I understand that they've already been working with the GRA to try and recalibrate the systems in anticipation of the implementation of this repeal. Dr. Ashigbe, can you please update us on that? The minister has given us a certain time frame. He says you can expect this to take effect before the end of next week, when the president assents to it next week, Wednesday. What's your own understanding of what it will take to make this effective so that I can begin to feel it in my pocket?
Well, thank you very much. And so, Evans, the GRA has invited us for a meeting. So we will have a meeting on Friday in the morning. And so I'm sure after Friday's meeting, as we await the minister, the president to assent the bill that has been approved, we would also be getting the guidelines around all of this repeal done, and then be able to then get the vendors. There will be some technical work that has to be done to make sure that we can reset E-Levy to zero. And then also the thing about it is that it has effect on various systems as well. So all of that work will be done. And for us, because we know that this is something that would inure to the benefit of our customers, it's something that we would want to do and do quickly. But you also would want to do it in such a way that you don't have any unintended consequences so far as your systems are concerned. So I would be able to tell you a timeline after our meeting with the GRA, but it's something that we really would, all of us have been expecting that. So it's something that we really would want to work at as quickly as possible so that Ghanaians would get the benefit of this. For me, I think it's a good policy that the government has been able to make a promise and move from a manifesto promise to a budget, and then a bill has been passed, and this is happening. So this is positive.
Professor Bokwing, how significant is this?
Well, you've heard from the stakeholders, from the vendors. I think that Ghana is waking up, and I congratulate the government for taking that decision. It's not because my Momo transactions are really anything to talk about at the national level, but you are looking at it that we want to grow the digital economy. I mean, look, if you look at the last 2.5 years of the NPP's administration, if you look almost every 6 months, you have to reconfigure your system to be tax compliant. The compliance costs incurred by banks, financial institutions, manufacturing companies, just to be compliant and all of that is huge. Okay, and if you look at that vis-a-vis how much that is also bringing and the inconvenience. I mean, you send money to your wife and having paid your taxes and all, I think it's just, I don't want to say it's evil, but it was backward. And I think it's good that we are resetting and we are starting off from this point. I think the good news also is that we will see Momo uptake. It's a very direct way of formalizing the informal system and also promote financial inclusion. Yeah. If you look at that channel and the role that financial inclusion plays actually in promoting consumption, in promoting growth and all of that, you will not situate a tax along that path. And I think that everybody, you don't need to be an economist to agree that this was poorly designed. And again, if you see the actual versus the expected and all of that, it tells you that this was not a policy that clearly went through the filtering process. Even, I believe that at the Ministry of Finance, the tax policy unit, and I'm not sure that this one was really subjected to critical analysis, sensitivity analysis, and all of that. So it's more emotionally driven, and the results is quite clear. Then again, if you look at, of course, I have a different view to betting tax. I've said that,
Yes.
made that clear, but they have the numbers, they've done that. And I think what is important for me also is for the Ministry of Finance to quickly take steps to correct the distortions in the VAT. You know, the COVID-19 health levy is embellished in the VAT system.
The minister confirmed today on another program that I hosted him on that the timeline is by the end of the year they want to scrap the COVID levy as part of it. I think
that's too long. We can't wait for that long, Evans. No, we can't wait for that long.
The argument is that it is part of a broader VAT reform.
Evans, it's just to buy time. Evans, it's just to buy time. I don't see the complications that much to say IMF has to come in to see how these distortions can be corrected. Probably buying time, so they use that avenue to get a bit more money. I think let's not go in that direction. It has to be done. It has to be done now. And I think that is how we should look at it. Because look, if you look at it, the impact of that 6% straight levy that doesn't give you an option for recovery, that adds directly to the high productive cost base of doing business. So if we are keen about resetting, and we are talking about moving, restoring macroeconomic stability, moving that to economic transformation, I think the VAT discussion is one thing that I think they should even prioritize. And I think towards the end of the year, I think that's too long.
Yeah,
that's too long. We can't wait for that long.
Stay with me, Chris. I'll come to you. But Dr. Ashigbe, now that it's been repealed, what do you anticipate will be the immediate impact on your sector?
So again, well, I think Prof had said it. You know, this was a very bad policy, a policy that did not, the engagements that we needed to do prior to it had not happened. There were papers that we had done about that. If you looked at it, it would be as if it was a prophecy. And so what we saw was the fact that the rate of growth and the way our digitalization was going was badly affected. So even if you look at what happened when we reduced from the 1.5 to 1%, and you saw that there was a growth, be it that you were not able to come back to the growth rate that was the pre-E-Levy, now that you've taken this off, immediately what would happen is that for the customer, there will be a lot of money. There was a bit more money instead of that 1%. Now it quickly reverts to the customer. It gives them a lot more money to be able to do the transactions themselves, to be able to engage in businesses and all of that. So you would find that businesses will benefit from the extra cash that is in the hands of all of us as customers. The other thing again that it will do, the E-Levy was so discriminatory. If Evans, you wanted to write a check of 20,000, you wanted to send up somebody 20,000, and the person had an enhanced wallet in such a way that 20,000 would go, you would look again once you attempt the transaction, your E-Levy would stare you in the face. And then immediately what you would do is that you write a check, or you do a bank transaction. So now what it would do is that it would encourage a lot more people to use the channel, and the efficiency that comes with the channel, you would get transactions begin to grow. When the transactions grow, what it would mean is that the mobile money agents as well would get a lot more commission. So within those local communities as well, you would be driving a lot of, stimulating a lot of growth in there. Again, what is going to happen is that even for merchant payments, you're going to drive a lot of transaction into merchant payments. And so that instead of just when you send the money to somebody, the person quickly goes to cash it because cash out was not impacted. Now people would be able to keep the money on their wallet. Exactly. And so that intention that government had, you remember the famous anti-money, stunt that the vice president did. You now will be able to do that. So I can go buy my watch, with the mobile money. The mobile money merchant can pay the bean seller with it, and the monies will circulate. What that would do is that it would provide data that the policymaker, be it from the fiscal side or the monetary side, would be able to do. Even Bank of Ghana itself, in terms of the currencies that they'll have to mint and print, there can be some cost savings within that. And then also, once the EMIs also get a lot more transactions, what would happen is that their revenues will go up, profitability will go up. Government would also get the CIT that we're already paying, the CIT would get to increase.
Yeah.
And then most importantly, the whole digitalization drive. It's something that really would be able to push it. And again, Evans, note that when this E-Levy came, another thing that we suffered, a lot of the fintechs and all of that, there were investment monies that were coming into the system that, because of the uncertainty that the E-Levy brought, immediately went away. So I'm pretty sure that these fintech companies that have a lot of these young people in it would also become a lot more vibrant. So all in all, this will be a positive move for the government. But again, I think Prof mentioned it. It is important that these issues about predictability, so far as our taxes are concerned, it's important that we are able, to have some consistency and some predictability. And most importantly, government should learn from this, that the way in which this policy was implemented, where, there was no engagement, nobody really discussed it, I'm hoping that government will learn and they will go back into the situation that even the MPP had, the tax dialogues, where some of these conversations, we can sit around it and discuss it, and then together. Because one thing that we as industry can support government to do, with all the data that we're collecting on this mobile money platform, is to be able to now bring the people who are currently not in the tax net into it. Because you see, with the E-Levy, what then happened was that for you and I, Evans, who are paid our salaries, who pay our taxes, when we go to pay the mason that works for you, when you go to pay, that electrician that works for you, you pay you paid him by mobile money, you pay the E-Levy. So he was not paying, the taxes on the income that they're earning. And we can work together with government and be able to draw all of these people who are in the rail sector so that they would also be able to pay their fair share. If you did that, the CIT that we're talking about, instead of the 25% that all, that is incident on all businesses, you'll be able to reduce it down and be able to get a lot more coming out of that space.
So there's a lot of impact then. Christian, I saw you nodding and agreeing. Stay with me. I want to bring in Stephen Amwa. Stephen Amwa was a former deputy finance minister, was part of the former administration, and I'm happy that he joins me. And Stephen, Dr. Stephen Amwa, from what I understand today, you were the member on the minority side who seconded the motion to have this repealed. Consider you were a deputy finance minister. Are you ready to admit tonight that your government got this horribly wrong and maybe take some time to apologize to those who suffered under the E-Levy? Kindly unmute for me. Hello, Stephen.
Yes, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay. My regards to our listeners and viewers tonight, and my respectable panelists we have, and all those who have spoken, and to you. Evans, of course, sometimes I think we all have to kind of get to the point of compromise, because other stakeholders have been saying so many things and coming on board with different views and opinions. That one, of course, democracy is about, I think, the masses' view to some extent. But as a financial economist, I still think that, yes, we have all agreed, but I don't think the question you're asking whether we have to eat a humble pie, that we made a mistake. Personally, I disagree. But of course, that doesn't mean I don't share or I wouldn't support whatever Kenyans want and the present government's decision. I think as a country, let's all be very careful with the way we manage tax issues in our country. Tax management policy is basically calibrated in nature. And all over the world, people do not want to pay taxes. One point I understand from just the previous speaker is that probably engaging other stakeholders and communicating well to have the cascading effect along the social stratification so that everyone, it doesn't matter the person's social stratum, the person will understand probably where that is the mistake is. And another mistake is the fact that almost any time when one party is in government, particularly NDC and PP, and the party or the government wants to introduce or increase a tax item, the other one in opposition, knowing that if you take a contrary position or whatever it is, Ghanaians will support you, and the other one will look back. This is what we've been doing to ourselves. But the point is, how is our fiscal space look like? We run what I describe as negative effective tax rate economy. That if we are not careful, we always say like, oh, the people are this. Yes, we need to listen to them. But the point is that technically, are we running, a ritual deficit, as I describe as negative effective tax rate economy, or we are running a very healthy economy that our revenue generation domestically is quite enough to avoid getting into huge debt to GDP and finally collapsing our country and not being able to.
Dr. Amma, if you isolate,
I'm ending with this.
Okay.
And not be able to perform other statutory obligations in the area of health, social intervention, infrastructure, education. We always have to underperform our benchmark. Is that what we really, really want? And at the end of the day, if the government doesn't also perform all these things well, the long-term effect is also, we call it cyclical effect.
Yeah, but if you isolate, I get a general point. But if you isolate the case of the E-Levy, it was simply a bad tax policy, was it not? Badly implemented.
If you're talking about implementation,
no, the implementation is one, but the policy itself was a bad one. I mean, you agree, you don't disagree with that?
No, Evans, one, that is your view. Two, my view is not that was bad. If you're talking about implementation...
Just out of curiosity.
Can I answer you?
This is out of curiosity. I mean, why did you endorse the motion then if you did not believe that it was a bad policy?
I think you heard me, my preamble. I said that no matter what it is, at a point in time, you need to compromise. You need to understand. You cannot keep on dragging issues, engage in controversies. And what's the essence of democracy? What's the essence of building consensus, understanding each other? At a point, it's not everything that your position alone should be taken. I'm sure that if you go around asking today I heard on one of the media platforms, I don't know whether it was you or I think it was Joy, I normally listen to Joy or Asasi. Then some other people are also saying that they shouldn't have taken it off. What I'm trying to say is that before we even say Jack, it had been bastardized, it had been demonized, and Ghanaians had been conscientized in a way that almost every Tom, Dick, and Harry and other stakeholders were against it. So in any case, how would that be very successful? But I am advising us all that tax management is calibrated. We should always look at our fiscal space. People talk about expanding the tax net. They started saying this probably before I was born. They talk about leakages. There are still issues with us to deal with. But whether these are right or wrong, we are still running a ritual deficit economy. An economy that amount that we generate domestically, excluding loans, if you share among all the houses or divide among the households in Ghana, each house, assuming hypothetically just say 10 Ghana cedis, the monies that we expend, if you divide, it's always far more than each house gets, which means we are always spending more than we generate as a country. So I think we should rather move to a situation where we can always communicate and implement it well for stakeholders to understand, and more importantly, proper usage of the money we generate as a country so that Ghanaians will benefit. But we shouldn't sit down and see tax. If you come out with any form of tax, it's demonic. It's like something that other party in opposition or other stakeholder will have to capitalize on. If person want to go, at least time will tell. whether it is good or bad. Because we got to a situation where that time where we were faced with impaired productivity. Ghanaians were asked to stay home, but they were paid. Public service. Private sector has sacked over 40,000 people. We had revenue shortfall of about 12 billion. And because we had impaired productivity, GDP was not growing. We resorted to debt financing. Then we went to almost 100 debt to GDP. And then things were so bad. And the only way out that time to save this country was to try to get enough tax generation or revenue generation. Of course, they were not palatable, but the situation at that time. But if Ghanaians think that decision was bad, of course, we are not, I mean, I don't know more than others. NPP is not the best, but we thought at that time, because the world's market that time, they had moved from more of, I mean, hands or human involved to electronics and electron because of, I mean, this whole COVID stuff. Okay, then let's go where the businesses are.
Those were the circumstances then. Then you implemented it over a period. Having implemented it with hindsight now, are you ready to admit having implemented, and you are an economist, so you know the science. The science says your projections, initial 6.9 billion, you had 500 million. All through, you haven't met the target. Having looked back and implemented it, wouldn't you agree it was a bad step to take then, even with the circumstances you just painted?
He will not. Yes.
No, but you are picking different segments of phases. Are you talking about because we could not meet our target, or because the whole thing was bad? And I'm just asking you to look at the data, the facts after implementation. Would you say it has really been useful? No, I think it was a good thing, but probably we could not communicate well. The opposition and other commentators.
Okay, so for you, this is a communication problem. Stay with me.
Can I come in?
Briefly.
No, Evans, I beg you, when you ask a question, give the person opportunity to also answer you.
No, I think you did.
You ask a question, you're expecting that I say what you want.
No, not at all. I think you did, but definitely land for me.
Let me answer. No, you don't let me answer because I don't say what you want. It's not fair.
No, not at all. I think it's also not fair to say that I'm expecting to say what I want. It's a question, and once you answer,
question,
that is taking time away. It's taking time away from what you have to say. Land.
You see, you haven't even allowed me to speak. You say I should land.
No, this back and forth is taking time away from what you have to say.
No, I'm coming.
Yeah.
You call me to speak. You ask me a question.
No,
it's 1 minute. Let me speak.
Dr. Amwa, land. Make your point. Make your point.
My point is that tax management policy, in my opinion, depends on your fiscal space.
No, but you've made that point. I mean, that's the point I'm making. At this point, you've made it.
A question.
Yeah.
So allow me. You say, do I see it to be a bad thing? I'll say no, it was not. We did not get our target because it was far before bastardized, demonized. So stakeholders did not patronize it.
Okay, thank you, because the point you just made is a repeated point. That's the point I was coming to you to say that's why I was moving on to Charles to get his take on that. He makes an important point, though, that one, communication was bad, two, it was demonized, and that if you had been properly and understood it, maybe the outcomes would have been different.
Evans, I must be very emphatic on this. Mobile money agents are businessmen. We are not politicians. We are in to break even. And anything that goes contrary to this is not a good thing. I feel that listening to
Dr. Subenamwa, he's a former finance
minister. He has said it all. There are data backing it that it's not going to help the sector. We said virtually everything, but they seems not to. But interestingly, I'm happy that the reality have done on all of us. I must say that agent must be looked at very, very carefully. This repeal is going to help the economy. Trust me, there were a lot of closures with regards to some agents. Most agents have 3 to 4 or 5 outlets, but because people were not patronizing, because
so it led to closure of some of your...
Yes, we presented a research data to the ministry.
Okay.
And then we were able to prove to them that most of the outlets have been closed and it's not helping our business.
So it put some of your members out of work?
Yes, exactly. And to a time that even those that we've employed were not being paid well because transactional volumes for the first 3 quarters, transactional volumes reduced drastically, and then it.
But the numbers that I showed at the beginning,
the first 3 months, I'm sorry,
it's true, it dropped.
The first 3 months,
but it
dropped
picked up. But it picked up very quickly.
But later, those people have already withdrew their investment, and therefore, when the people were made to understand through the agent body that will begin to educate their customers, then people began to at least come back and transact. And other people also looked for alternatives. It will surprise you that most banks willing to loan or give out loan to agents, because of the E-Levy, they were a bit skeptical. Those who were willing to did it on a high interest rate because they were not certain. They could not see what
became more risky.
Exactly. Yeah. So I feel that as a country, we should come together and make sure that when you bring a policy, the policy is geared towards the citizenry. And if these people are telling you virtually everything that diffuse your projection, you should at least be in bed with them.
And then now they have obviously repealed
it. So going forward,
I feel makes the point about all the positives that you agree with him.
Definitely, yes.
Okay. And there's a quick point that I want the Professor Bokpin to address, which is fundamental to the gap that will be created with the repeal of all these taxes. The government says, and the finance minister, when he joined us at the top of the hour, made the point that the tax refund account is sustainable. The savings they're going to make there is sustainable to plug the whole over period. Do you agree, Professor Bokpin? And briefly, I have a minute on this.
Well, it's a low-hanging fruit. And to say it's sustainable, I hold a different view. We should be looking at the traditional tax handles and then improve efficiency in terms of their tax performance. But of course, if you look at the way the tax refund works, it's all part of our revenue in the first place, right? So it's a certain percentage, let's say 6% of previous year's collections that has been set aside. But on one hand, you would agree with the minister that if you look at the utilization of the tax refund, it's been less than 50%. It's not that the rest of the amount is actually kept there, but again, it's utilized in ways other than what the law specifies. So the move probably is that let's rather reduce the rate, the capping from 6% to 4%, because after all, we don't get to utilize all the amounts, okay, in terms of the application process. So instead of allowing the balance to be there for it to be swept at the end of the year through virement and all of that, which will raise an audit issue, let's rather reduce the rate so that the difference is added to the consolidated fund, which will be appropriated. So I think it's the right thing to do based on the data. The data tells us that less than 50% is utilized.
But you say it is not. But you say in the long term it's not sustainable to plug this hole over.
These are originally part of your collections. They are part of your collections. Okay. So if you are looking at a more sustainable way of expanding your tax to GDP ratio, then because after a while, this will grow to overcome that, right? So it's just like the way your salary increases, maximum 2-3 months, your expenditure rises to cover it up and all of that. So we should be looking at a more sustainable way, right, in terms of VAT, how we can improve the efficiency, corporate income tax, and then also other emerging areas. I think that will be more sustainable going forward. But of course, in the circumstance, given the options available, it will look like this is a low-hanging fruit.
That you can plug and use. Prof, thank you very much. And Dr. Sibinum, I'm grateful that you joined us. And Dr. Ashigbe as well. Chrissy, again, thank you for joining us.
Evans, why won't you allow me to speak?
Briefly, but very briefly, because I have to run.
Okay. I want to use this medium to at least plead to government to take serious caution with regards to our security. From January to now, over 11 deaths and huge attacks. And I feel that once government is augmenting effort by repealing this E-Levy, it should move a step further to at least increase our security in order to have a very fruitful business environment.
Thank you very much, Chrissy. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.